We're just over halfway through the season, and it's been an uphill battle. There's a lot going on. It's definitely a lot busier than we've ever been, and bigger projects than we've ever taken on right now.
For more than a decade, Parker Schnabel has chased gold through the frozen wilderness of Alaska and the Yukon, a young man who turned dirt into destiny. But this season, everything changed. The pressure was unlike anything he had ever faced. The projects grew bigger, the risks became higher, and the stakes reached unimaginable heights. In a world where most miners were content scraping through leftovers, Parker made a daring choice: to go deeper. Beneath untouched, frozen ground lay a promise that could either make him a legend or destroy everything he had built. What began as a desperate gamble soon spiraled into one of the most shocking discoveries in gold rush history. Deep beneath the permafrost, hidden behind locked gates and coded maps, Parker's crew unearthed a gold vein so rich it looked less like a deposit and more like a river of fortune. Yet the gold itself wasn't the real story. The truth lay in the danger, the obsession, and the relentless pursuit that pushed Parker and his team to the breaking point. Because in the unforgiving world of gold mining, fortune doesn't come easy. It's ripped from the earth, 1 ounce at a time. Every shovel, every breakdown, every sleepless night carries a cost. And as Parker's empire grew, so did the weight of his ambition. This isn't just a story about gold. It's a story about how far one man will go to chase a dream that could just as easily bury him alive. If you think you've seen Parker Schnabel push limits before, think again. This is the season that changed everything, the moment where determination meets obsession and success flirts dangerously with collapse. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to see is gold fever at its most extreme. In the frozen wilderness of the Klondike, the line between fortune and failure is razor thin. And this season, Parker Schnabel was about to walk that line blindfolded. The gold fields of Alaska had made him a millionaire before he could even rent a car. But success breeds expectation and pressure. Every ounce mined came with the weight of a legacy, the ghost of his late grandfather John, and a crew that depended on him for their livelihoods. This time, Parker wasn't just chasing gold, he was chasing proof. Proof that he could outthink, outwork, and outlast the legends who came before him. So, he made a decision that would stun his crew and divide his camp, literally. Parker split his operation in two. On one side, the Wolf Cut crew, a team handpicked to venture into untouched, frozen ground, an area so deep in permafrost that no miner in his right mind would gamble a season on it. Their mission wasn't to find gold, not yet. Their mission was to dig, thaw, and move mountains of dirt in search of a future no one could see. On the other, the Drift Cut crew, led by Mitch and Tyson, veterans of chaos, men Parker trusted to keep the operation alive. Their goal was immediate: find gold, find it fast, and generate enough money to feed the machine. Every drop of diesel, every paycheck, every ounce of morale depended on their success. It was a bold strategy, or as some called it, madness disguised as ambition. Within weeks, reality hit hard. The Wolf Cut crew's site was a frozen tomb. Excavators clawed through ice as hard as concrete. The diesel burners groaned day and night, devouring fuel faster than the gold could pay for it. The men worked in silence, backs breaking, faith fading, no shimmer, no color, just endless dirt and exhaustion. Meanwhile, across the valley, the Drift Cut crew battled their own demons: time, fuel, machinery. Every hour without gold pushed the operation closer to collapse. The weight of 2 full-scale projects crushed Parker's finances, stretching every dollar to its breaking point. For the first time in years, his confidence began to crack. He could feel the whispers in the camp. He's lost it. He's pushing too far. He's going to bury us all in debt. But what the crew didn't see was the fire behind his eyes, that stubborn spark of the Schnabel bloodline that refused to quit. Parker believed there was something under that ice, something that could redefine his entire career. Nights grew longer. Tempers flared. Some questioned the plan, others questioned the man. And as the tension built, it wasn't just the ground that was starting to fracture. It was the crew itself. Leadership in the North isn't about speeches or promises. It's about surviving the silence, the kind that comes when every decision costs money and every mistake costs trust. And as Parker stood on that frozen ridge, staring out over the two camps he had created, he realized something. This wasn't just about gold anymore. It was about control. It was about legacy. And it was about proving to his crew, to his family, to himself, that he could bet everything and still come out on top. But as the days turned to weeks and the accounts bled dry, even Parker began to wonder if he'd gone too far. Because beneath that ice, something was stirring. And soon, his greatest gamble would lead to a discovery that no one saw coming. The Klondike doesn't give up her secrets easily. For weeks, the Wolf-Cut crew had clawed through layers of frozen earth, burning through fuel, time, and faith. What started as Parker Schnabel's boldest experiment had begun to look like a slow-motion disaster, a gamble that could destroy everything he'd built. The permafrost was merciless. Diesel lines froze. Equipment groaned and broke under the strain. Every day, Parker watched the fuel gauge drop and the tension rise. Behind the noise of the machines, there was a heavier silence, the sound of doubt spreading through the crew. And then, it happened. One morning, as the first sunlight cracked through the Alaskan fog, the Wolf-Cut sluice box began to sing, that unmistakable metallic whisper of gold hitting steel. The vibration changed, the tone deepened, and suddenly the mats were glowing with color. Thick, heavy flakes, pure Klondike gold. After weeks of despair, the impossible had become real. The men who'd been ready to walk away now stood in stunned silence, their exhaustion replaced by disbelief. The Wolf-Cut crew had found it, the kind of gold that changes everything. When Parker arrived, he didn't smile. He just stared into the sluice, the reflection of the gold flickering in his eyes. He knew what it meant. They weren't just mining anymore. They were winning. But fate wasn't done. Across the valley, at nearly the same moment, the Drift-Cut crew hit their own jackpot, a thick, golden pay streak that lit up their sluice box like sunlight on water. 2 crews, 2 discoveries, one man's impossible plan, vindicated in the span of a single day. The Klondike had finally answered. And for Parker Schnabel, this was more than just a victory. It was redemption. His wild gamble had paid off in gold. The same crew that doubted him now looked at him with something else, awe. But the gold rush doesn't reward victory for long. Every new ounce brought new problems. The wash plants began to choke under the weight of endless pay dirt. Bearings melted, pumps blew out. The constant roar of success turned into the grinding scream of overworked machines. And the fuel, the lifeblood of the mine, was vanishing faster than the money could come in. Every drum that arrived by truck was burned within hours. The operation was growing too fast to control. Yet Parker pushed harder. He tightened security, sealed access roads, and swore the crew to silence. No visitors, no leaks, no cameras without permission. Something deeper was driving him now, not greed, but fear. He'd found what every miner dreams of, and what every rival would kill for. The once open camp turned into a fortress. The laughter around the fire was gone. Every conversation was hushed, every glance filled with suspicion. Some crew members whispered that Parker was hiding something, that the gold he'd found wasn't just rich, it was unnatural. And maybe they were right, because the deeper they dug, the stranger the readings became. Ground scans showed shapes that didn't belong, unnatural layers buried beneath the frost, signals that no one could explain. The Wolf Cut wasn't just gold country anymore, it was something else. As the season reached its turning point, Parker stood over the sluice, gold dust clinging to his gloves, his breath fogging in the cold. He'd proven his critics wrong, but somewhere deep down, he knew this victory came with a price. Because in the Klondike, every ounce of gold carries a shadow. And as the ground continued to thaw, that shadow was about to rise. In the Klondike, gold isn't the hardest thing to find. Time is. After the double strike at Wolf Cut and Drift Cut, Parker Schnabel's operation was on the edge of glory and collapse. The ground was rich beyond imagination, but his machines were choking under the weight of success. Every hour, thousands of yards of pay dirt poured in, and his aging wash plants simply couldn't keep up. The gold was there, he just couldn't reach it fast enough. For Parker, the solution wasn't to slow down, it was to double down. He needed something massive, ruthless, unstoppable. He needed Mighty Big Red. This wasn't just another machine. It was a monster, a custom-built wash plant the size of a house, designed to devour entire hillsides and spit out pure gold. It was the biggest investment of Parker's career, millions of dollars in steel, hydraulics, and hope. But with every gamble comes a price. The setup became a brutal race against time. Crews worked through the night, welding under floodlights that cut through the fog. The cold bit into their hands, the wind tore at their faces. Tempers flared, arguments erupted, and behind every fight was the same fear. What if it doesn't work? Parker's mentor, Rick and Mitch, warned him to slow down. But Parker had no time for hesitation. He was haunted by the ticking clock, the weather, the short season, the crushing cost of running 2 full mines. He wasn't just fighting nature, he was fighting the limits of his own ambition. Then, the machine roared to life. For a moment, the camp stood still, watching as Mighty Big Red thundered, washing ton after ton of pay dirt, separating gold from gravel with brutal precision. The numbers were staggering. Ounces turned into pounds. Pounds turned into fortunes. But in the north, fortune never comes without a test. Halfway through their biggest cleanup yet, Big Red screamed and died. A screen deep inside the wash plant had torn apart, clogging the system and flooding the sluice. Production ground to a halt. Every minute offline cost thousands. In the freezing dark, Mitch and his crew climbed inside the belly of the beast, welding sparks bouncing off the steel walls as frost gathered on their gear. It was dangerous, exhausting work, the kind that breaks men. But when the welds cooled and the engines roared again, the payoff was something no one could have predicted. The first cleanup after the repair was record-breaking. Hundreds of ounces of gold spilling across the mats, glittering like fire in the floodlights. The crew that had once doubted Parker now cheered his name. They had turned chaos into triumph. For Parker, it was more than a victory. It was vindication. Proof that his instincts, reckless as they seemed, were right all along. In that moment, standing before the rumbling giant he'd built from steel and belief, he realized he had crossed a line. He was no longer the student. He was the empire. But success in the Klondike is never permanent. With every ounce of gold came new whispers, new eyes watching from the shadows, rivals, speculators, strangers asking questions they shouldn't be asking. Parker had built a fortress of wealth, but even the strongest walls can't keep everything out. As Mighty Big Red tore through the earth, uncovering riches no one thought possible, something else began to surface, something that had nothing to do with gold. And soon, that discovery would test not just the limits of his machines, but the limits of his trust. In the gold fields of the Yukon, silence can mean two things: failure or something far more dangerous. After a season of record-breaking cleanups, Parker Schnabel had everything he ever wanted: money, machines, and power. But with fortune comes fear, and fear changes a man. The Klondike was talking. Stories spread like wildfire about a young miner who struck it rich beyond imagination and then shut everyone out. Parker's once bustling operation was now sealed tight, guarded like a vault. Checkpoints, security cameras, even longtime crew members found themselves on the outside looking in. What had begun as a gold mine was now a fortress. Inside the wire, Parker's world grew smaller and colder. He trusted fewer people. The laughter that once echoed through camp was gone, replaced by the hum of machinery and the crackle of radios. Even his closest allies felt the shift. Mitch noticed it first: the long silences in the truck, the way Parker stared at maps but said nothing. Something had changed. And outside those fences, the rumors began to grow louder. Rivals whispered about secret tunnels, about unrecorded cleanups, about caches of gold buried under frozen ground. Some claimed Parker had found something else, something not meant to be found at all. But Parker said nothing. His success had turned him into a ghost story, a legend too rich to be real, too isolated to be understood. Even the local miners, hardened men of the North, began to wonder what was really going on behind those gates. For Parker, the lockdown wasn't about greed, it was about control. He'd seen too many fortunes vanish, too many dreams stolen by those who smiled to his face and schemed behind his back. This time, he was protecting everything he'd built, from the world and maybe from himself. Yet the tighter he closed his grip, the more the cracks began to show. Crews questioned orders, friendships frayed. A quiet divide formed between those who believed in him and those who feared him. The mine that once pulsed with ambition now beat with paranoia. Every discovery was catalogued, sealed, hidden away. Every outsider became a threat. And somewhere deep beneath the permafrost, the ground itself began to shift, as if the Yukon was holding its own secret, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. For the first time, success didn't feel like victory. It felt like danger. Because in the Klondike, gold doesn't just bring wealth, it brings eyes. And sometimes, those eyes are watching from much closer than you think. As Parker's operation sinks deeper into secrecy, one question remains. What is he really hiding in the frozen heart of his empire? In the heart of the Yukon, after months of exhaustion, breakdowns, and bitter cold, something extraordinary happened. On a single, golden day, Parker Schnabel's crew pulled more gold from the earth than ever before, over $800,000 worth in just one cleanup. The kind of day that miners dream of and legends are built on. But this moment wasn't about money, it was about proof. For Parker, every ounce represented the years he spent defying expectations. The long nights, the missed holidays, the arguments, the sacrifices. He wasn't chasing wealth anymore. He was chasing something much rarer. legacy. As the crew gathered around the gold table, the air was thick with disbelief. The sluice box shimmered with dust so pure it caught the morning sun like fire. Instead of cutting checks, Parker did something no one expected. He handed each crew member gold, real, heavy Yukon gold, straight from the dirt they'd bled to move. It wasn't payment, it was recognition, a symbol that they were no longer just workers. They were part of history. For a moment, even the endless noise of engines and excavators faded. There was only silence, the sound of men staring at what they'd torn from the frozen ground, realizing how far they'd come. But beyond the camp, whispers began to grow louder. Was any of this real? Could a modern mining crew really pull that much gold from the Yukon's beaten ground? Or was the story bigger than the truth? Fans and critics clashed online. Conspiracy threads spun wild. Some claimed the numbers were inflated. Others believed Parker had found an untouched deposit worth tens of millions. The debate caught the attention of geologists and gold experts who dissected every frame of footage. They explained the science behind the miracle, how glaciers, thousands of years ago, carved hidden channels of gold through the permafrost, veins that could still be struck today by those brave enough to dig deep enough. Maybe Parker's success wasn't luck, maybe it was destiny. But beneath the celebration, something more complicated stirred within him. The deeper Parker dug, the more he began to see that gold wasn't the real prize. It was the struggle, the grind, the fight, the endless pursuit that gave life meaning. In that moment, the boy who once followed in his grandfather's footsteps had become a man, not just a miner, but a builder of dreams and a bearer of legacy. Yet behind the shine of gold, shadows still lingered. The operation had grown too powerful, too secretive, too isolated. Old friendships were wearing thin. Rivals were circling, and deep in the Yukon, there were whispers of something even bigger, something that could rewrite what we thought we knew about this land and the riches buried beneath it. As the season closed and Parker looked over his mountains of gold, one truth echoed louder than the machines. The real gold was never in the ground. It was in the journey, and in the price he paid to claim it. Because in the Yukon, the earth still holds secrets, and Parker Schnabel may have just uncovered the first clue.